The bloodied telegram trembled in Willa Osborne's hands on a sweltering June afternoon in 1876, the cruel words blurring through her tears as she collapsed onto the porch of what she now knew was a house built on lies. Willa had been waiting for news from her husband of 3 years, Edmund Osborne, a successful cattle merchant who traveled extensively through the Western Territories. The message wasn't from him, but rather the U.S. Marshal's office in Cheyenne, Wyoming Territory. The telegram stated plainly what her mind refused to comprehend. Edmund Osborne wasn't his real name. He was actually Edward Williams, a notorious swindler with 3 other wives across the frontier. He had been shot dead while attempting to flee arrest. Her entire marriage, the cattle business, the promises of wealth, the monthly trips to check on investments, all fabrications. The money he'd invested for their future was gone, embezzled. Even the deed to their modest home in Cottonwood Springs, Colorado, was fraudulent. Edward had been investigated for months before his death. The telegram concluded with an apologetic note that officers would arrive within the week to question her about any remaining assets. Willa stared at the empty street from her porch as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty road. At 26, she was a widow to a man who had never truly been her husband. Worse still, she was destitute, with creditors likely to descend once news spread. The sound of approaching hoofbeats broke her stupor. She hastily wiped her tears as a rider approached Sheriff Thomas Miller, whose sympathetic expression told her he already knew. "Mrs. Osborne," he said, removing his hat, "I expect you've received word about Edmund." "He wasn't Edmund," Willa replied, her voice hollow, "and I wasn't really his wife, was I?" Sheriff Miller shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, Willa, truly. Marshal's office sent me a wire ahead of the telegram. They'll be sending someone to help sort through, well, whatever's left." "There's nothing left to sort through," Willa said bitterly. 3 years of my life, that's what he took. "You've got friends here," Sheriff Miller offered. "Rebecca at the boarding house mentioned you could stay." "Thank you, Sheriff," Willa interrupted, unwilling to accept charity just yet. Pride was about all she had left. "I'll manage for now." After the sheriff departed, Willa moved through the house like a ghost, touching furniture and belongings that suddenly felt foreign. In the bedroom, she pulled Edmund's leather satchel from beneath their bed. She'd never opened it. He'd always been so protective of his business papers. Now, her hands worked feverishly at the buckles. Inside were documents with different names, correspondence with other women, and a small portrait of a family she'd never seen. The final betrayal was a deed to property in Montana Territory, a ranch purchased with money he'd claimed to be investing for their future. Willa spent the night staring at the deed by lamplight. By morning, her tears had dried, replaced by resolute determination. If Edward had purchased property with her money, then it rightfully belonged to her. Before creditors could claim it, before the law could complicate matters, she would travel to Whitehorn, Montana Territory, and claim what might be her only chance at a future. 2 days later, Willa boarded the northbound train with only a carpetbag of possessions and the deed hidden in her bodice. She'd sold what she could and left the rest for creditors. As the train pulled away from Cottonwood Springs, Willa didn't look back. There was nothing there for her anymore except painful memories and pitying glances. The journey was arduous. From the train, she took a stagecoach that rattled her bones across terrain that grew increasingly wild and beautiful. Despite her circumstances, Willa couldn't help but marvel at the towering mountains and sweeping valleys of Montana Territory. By the time the stagecoach deposited her in the small settlement of Whitehorn, a week had passed since she'd received the telegram. Whitehorn was little more than a wide spot in the road: a general store, saloon, small hotel, livery stable, and scattered houses. Mountains loomed in the distance, and vast rangelands stretched in every direction. The town sat in a valley where several ranches had been established in recent years as the territory opened to settlement. Exhausted and dusty from travel, Willa stood on the main street, carpetbag in hand, trying to decide her next move. According to the deed, the property, the Triple Cross Ranch, lay 10 miles north of town. She would need transportation and supplies. The general store seemed the logical place to start. As she climbed the steps to the wooden porch, a commotion down the street caught her attention. A group of men had gathered outside the saloon, voices raised in anger. "You've got no business here, Harrington," one man shouted. "You and your outfit have pushed folks around long enough." At the center of the confrontation stood a tall man with broad shoulders and a stance that suggested he was accustomed to facing down trouble. His dark hat shadowed his features, but there was no mistaking the calm authority in his voice as he responded. "Take it up with the territorial court, Parker. Until then, the water rights are legal and binding." Willa found herself staring, momentarily distracted from her purpose. The confrontation ended abruptly when the man called Parker spat on the ground and stormed off with his companions. The tall man watched them go, then turned toward the general store and spotted Willa. For a moment, their eyes locked. Something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, though they'd never met. Then he tipped his hat slightly and continued toward the saloon. Shaking herself from the strange encounter, Willa entered the general store. An older man with spectacles greeted her from behind the counter. "Afternoon, miss. Don't believe I've seen you in Whitehorn before, just passing through." "No," Willa replied. "I've come about property north of town." "The Triple Cross Ranch," the storekeeper's friendly expression faltered. "Triple Cross, that's been abandoned since winter. Edmund Osborne bought it but never showed up to claim it. Strange business." Willa's heart raced. "I'm Willa Osborne, his widow." The storekeeper, Henry Davis, as he soon introduced himself, regarded her with new interest. "Mrs. Osborne, well now that's unexpected. We heard Mr. Osborne had met with some trouble back east." "He did," Willa replied tersely. "I've come to claim the property." "Well, you might want to speak with Sheriff Harrington before making plans. There's been some complications." "Sheriff Harrington?" "Samuel Harrington, the man you might have seen outside just now." Davis leaned forward. "Triple Cross sits on contested land. Water rights dispute with the Big Sky outfit run by James Parker. It's why your husband got it so cheap, I expect." Willa felt her newfound confidence waver. "Is the deed not valid?" "Oh, it's legal enough, just comes with troubles attached." Davis gave her a sympathetic look. "Sheriff's office is down the street if you want the full story." With directions from Davis, Willa made her way to the small sheriff's office. Her mind raced with this new information. Edmund had bought disputed property, likely another of his schemes. Had he planned to sell the ranch to unsuspecting buyers once the water disputes escalated? Nothing would surprise her anymore. The sheriff's office was a simple wooden structure with a sign declaring law enforcement and S. Harrington, Sheriff. Willa hesitated before pushing open the door, uncertain what reception awaited her. The office was empty save for a deputy who informed her that Sheriff Harrington would return shortly. She waited, growing increasingly anxious as the minutes ticked by. Finally, the door opened, and the tall man from the street confrontation entered, up close. Samuel Harrington was more imposing, mid-30s, with dark hair showing hints of silver at the temples, strong features weathered by sun and wind, and eyes a startling shade of blue. Those eyes studied her with professional assessment. "Madam, can I help you?" "Sheriff Harrington, I'm Willa Osborne. I've come about the Triple Cross Ranch." Recognition flickered across his face. "Edmund Osborne's wife, widow," she corrected, pulling the deed from her pocket. "This property was purchased with my money, and I've come to claim it." The sheriff's expression remained neutral as he examined the document. "This appears to be in order, Mrs. Osborne. However, there are complications you should be aware of." Mr. Davis mentioned water rights. "That's part of it." Sheriff Harrington handed back the deed. "Triple Cross sits on Bitter Creek, which also runs through Big Sky Ranch. Your husband's purchase came with junior water rights, which means during dry seasons, James Parker can legally divert water before it reaches your property." "And that makes the land worthless?" Willa asked, her heart sinking, not worthless, but challenging. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Mrs. Osborne, forgive my directness, but do you have any ranching experience?" "No," she admitted, "but I can learn." Something that might have been admiration flashed in his eyes. "It's not knowledge that concerns me. Running a ranch is hard work for a full crew, let alone a woman alone." "I don't have many options, Sheriff," Willa said stiffly. "My husband's debts have taken everything else." Sheriff Harrington studied her for a long moment. "I understand, but there's something else you should know. The Triple Cross buildings have been abandoned for months. They'll need substantial repairs before they're livable." "I see." Willa fought to keep her composure. Another obstacle. "Another setback. There's a room available at Mrs. Bennett's boarding house," the sheriff offered. "I suggest you take some time to consider your situation before heading out to the property." "Thank you for the advice," Willa replied, gathering her dignity. "But I didn't come all this way to stay in town. I'll see my property today if you can direct me to someone who might provide transportation." The sheriff's mouth twitched, whether in annoyance or admiration, she couldn't tell. "The livery stable might rent you a wagon, but I wouldn't recommend making that trip alone. The road can be treacherous, especially if you're unfamiliar with the territory." "Then perhaps you could recommend a guide," Sheriff Harrington rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "I'm heading in that direction myself later today. I could take you if you're determined." Willa hesitated, surprised by the offer. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose. It's no imposition. I need to check on some matters near there anyway." He glanced at the clock on the wall. "I can meet you at the livery in 2 hours, if that suits you." Willa agreed to the arrangement, though not without reservations. The sheriff's kindness seemed genuine, but experience had taught her to be wary of men offering assistance, especially when she was vulnerable. After arranging temporary storage for her carpetbag at the general store, Willa used her limited funds to purchase basic supplies: food, lamp oil, matches, and a blanket. She couldn't afford much, but it would be enough to get her through the first night at the ranch. 2 hours later, she met Sheriff Harrington at the livery as arranged. He'd secured a sturdy wagon and was loading supplies of his own when she arrived. "Mrs. Osborne," he greeted her, helping her up onto the wagon seat. "Ready to see your property?" "Yes," she said, settling her skirts. "And Sheriff, I appreciate your assistance, but I want to be clear I intend to make a go of this ranch, regardless of its condition." A slight smile crossed his features. "I never doubted it, madam." As the wagon rolled out of town, Willa felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. The road followed Bitter Creek northward, winding through grassy hills and stands of pine. Sheriff Harrington pointed out landmarks and neighboring ranches, his deep voice matter-of-fact but not unfriendly. "That ridge to the west marks the boundary of Big Sky Ranch," he explained. "Parker runs about 3,000 head of cattle on 30,000 acres. He's been pushing to expand eastward for years. And the Triple Cross stands in his way. You catch on quick, Mrs. Osborne. Please call me Willa. Mrs. Osborne feels like someone else's name now." The sheriff glanced at her, curiosity in his gaze. "Then I'm Sam, at least when we're not in town." Willa nodded, oddly comforted by this small concession to informality. "How long have you been sheriff, Sam?" "5 years in Whitehorn." "Before that, I rode with the Montana Territorial Marshals for 7 years. That's a long time upholding the law." "Long enough to know it doesn't always protect those who need it most," he replied, a hint of bitterness in his tone. Willa studied his profile, wondering what experiences had shaped that conviction. "Is that why you offered to help me? Because the law might not?" Sam's gaze remained fixed on the road ahead. "I offered to help because it was the right thing to do. And because I've seen what happens when newcomers venture into unfamiliar territory, unprepared." They traveled in companionable silence after that, the rhythmic creaking of the wagon and the steady clip-clop of hooves creating a hypnotic backdrop to the journey. After about an hour, Sam guided the wagon onto a narrower track that branched off from the main road. "Triple Cross is just beyond that rise," he said, pointing to a gentle slope ahead. "It's not much to look at, but the land has potential." As they crested the hill, Willa got her first glimpse of what was now her property. The main house was a modest 2-story structure of weathered timber, its windows dark and empty. A barn stood nearby, its door hanging askew, and a corral with broken fencing completed the cluster of buildings. Beyond stretched grassland dotted with wildflowers and sage, rolling toward distant mountains. Despite its dilapidated condition, Willa felt a surprising surge of ownership. This was hers, perhaps the only thing truly hers in years. "Well," Sam asked as he brought the wagon to a halt in the yard. "It needs work," Willa admitted, "but it's better than I expected." "The roof on the house seems sound," Sam observed. "That's something, at least." They spent the next hour examining the property. The house was dusty and showed signs of animal intrusion, but the structure was solid. The barn needed more extensive repairs, with portions of the roof missing and stalls damaged. "Edmund, my husband, bought this site unseen, didn't he?" Willa asked as they stood in the yard, surveying the property. "Most likely," Sam agreed. "He wrote to inquire about properties in the area last fall. I handled the paperwork when he sent payment, but he never came to see it," Willa sighed. "Another of his schemes, I suppose. Buy cheap, sell dear once someone desperate came along." Sam's gaze was thoughtful. "You didn't know what kind of man he was." "I thought I did," Willa replied, a familiar ache in her chest. "We were married 3 years. I believed everything he told me about his business, our future. A week ago, I learned it was all lies. He wasn't even legally my husband." "I'm sorry," Sam said quietly, and the genuine compassion in his voice nearly undid her. "Don't be," Willa said, squaring her shoulders. "I'm done feeling sorry for myself. This place, problematic as it is, gives me a chance to start over. I intend to make the most of it." "It won't be easy," Sam warned. "Even if you can repair the buildings, running a ranch takes capital. Livestock, equipment, hired hands, I'll figure it out," Willa interrupted. "I have to." Sam studied her for a long moment, then nodded as if coming to a decision. "There's a cabin about a mile south of here. Man named Wilbur Jenkins, old trapper turned ranch hand. He might be willing to help with repairs for fair pay. I can't afford to hire help yet. Jenkins owes me a favor," Sam said, "and he's good with tools. I'll speak to him tomorrow." Willa hesitated, uncomfortable with accepting more charity. "I don't want special treatment, Sheriff. It's not special treatment, it's being neighborly. That's how folks survive out here." Sam's expression softened slightly. "Let me help get you started, Willa. After that, it's all on you." The use of her first name shouldn't have affected her, but it did a small reminder that she was a person, not just a problem to be solved. "Thank you," she said finally. "I would appreciate the help, but I'll repay any kindness once I'm established." Sam nodded, seemingly satisfied. "It'll be dark soon. I should head back to town." "I'll be fine here," Willa assured him, though the prospect of spending the night alone in the abandoned house was daunting. "I've no doubt," Sam replied, "but I'll leave you my spare revolver just in case. Do you know how to use one?" "Yes." "Edmund," she caught herself. "Edward taught me, ironically enough, said a woman should know how to protect herself. He was right about that, at least." Sam retrieved a Colt revolver from his saddlebag and handed it to her. "It's loaded. Keep it close." Before departing, Sam helped Willa clear the kitchen and living area of debris, brought in firewood from a still-stocked pile behind the house, and made sure the stone fireplace was safe to use. As the sun began to set, Willa stood in the doorway watching the sheriff's wagon disappear down the track. Alone for the first time since arriving in Whitehorn, Willa felt the full weight of her situation. The house creaked and settled around her as darkness fell, punctuated by unfamiliar wilderness sounds. Using her new lamp sparingly to conserve oil, she made a simple meal from her provisions, then wrapped herself in the blanket and settled on the floor near the fireplace, revolver within reach. Sleep came fitfully, her dreams haunted by Edmund's face and the uncertain future that lay before her. When dawn broke, Willa rose stiff but determined. Today would be the first day of her new life, whatever that might hold. She spent the morning cleaning the kitchen and one of the upstairs bedrooms, using water from the well that, thankfully, still functioned. By midday, she had created a habitable space, though it was far from comfortable. As she was considering what to tackle next, she heard the approach of horses. Willa stepped onto the porch, Sam's revolver in hand, to find the sheriff himself approaching with an older man on a mule. Behind them, a wagon loaded with lumber and tools creaked along the rutted track. "Morning," Sam called, tipping his hat. Hope you don't mind company, this is Wilbur Jenkins. Best handyman in the territory. Jenkins was a weathered man of perhaps 60, with a full beard streaked with gray and sharp eyes that assessed the property critically. Sheriff says you need help getting this place livable, he said by way of greeting. I can see he wasn't exaggerating. Mr. Jenkins, Willa acknowledged, I appreciate any assistance, but I should warn you my funds are limited. The old man snorted. Sheriff already explained your situation. I'm not here for money. Man gets bored in a one-room cabin with nothing but memories. I'll help because it's something to do. And I brought supplies, Sam added, gesturing to the wagon. Consider it an investment in Whitehorn's newest citizen. Willa wanted to protest, but saw the resolve in both men's faces. Pride warred with pragmatism, and pragmatism won. Thank you both. I won't forget this. Over the next several days, a transformation began at Triple Cross. Jenkins proved to be a skilled carpenter, and with Sam's occasional help, the house rapidly became more habitable. They repaired broken windows, patched holes in the walls, rebuilt the front porch steps, and cleaned the chimney. Sam rode out each evening after his duties in town, often bringing additional supplies or news. Willa began to look forward to his visits, though she tried to keep her growing fondness for the sheriff in check. She was, after all, still recovering from one man's deception. She couldn't afford to be vulnerable again. On the 5th day, as Willa was tending a small vegetable garden she discovered overgrown behind the house, the sound of multiple riders approached. She straightened, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, to see a group of men on horseback cresting the hill. In the lead was a heavy-set man with a florid face and expensive clothing. James Parker, she guessed, from Sam's descriptions. 3 ranch hands flanked him, expressions unfriendly. Willa set down her gardening tools and walked to meet them, conscious of her dirty hands and disheveled appearance. Wilbur emerged from the barn where he'd been working, watching warily. Parker reined his horse to a stop a few yards from Willa. So it's true, he said without preamble. Osborne's widow has come to claim this worthless patch of dirt. Willa lifted her chin. Mr. Parker, I presume. This worthless patch is my property, legally deeded. Parker's laugh held no humor. Legal, maybe. Smart, no. This ranch can't sustain itself without reliable water, and I control the water rights on Bitter Creek. So I've been told. Nevertheless, I intend to stay. You're making a mistake, Parker said, his voice hardening. I offered Osborne a fair price for this land before he died. That offer extends to you for now. I'm not interested in selling. Parker's face darkened. Everyone has their price, Mrs. Osborne. You'll find yours when your crops wither and your stock thirsts. Bitter Creek runs low in summer and my rights come first. Is that a threat, Mr. Parker? Just stating facts, madam. Be reasonable. Take my money and go back east where you belong. This is no place for a woman alone. She ain't alone, Wilbur spoke up, moving to stand beside Willa. And Sheriff Harrington takes a mighty dim view of intimidation tactics. At the mention of Sam, Parker's expression soured further. Harrington has no authority over water rights. The territorial court settled that years ago. Then there's nothing more to discuss, Willa said firmly. Good day, Mr. Parker. For a moment it seemed Parker might say more, but he merely glared at her before wheeling his horse around. You'll change your mind, he called over his shoulder as the group rode away. They all do eventually. Once they were gone, Willa released a shaky breath. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, Wilbur, he corrected. And don't thank me yet. Parker wasn't bluffing about the water. When summer hits full force, Bitter Creek slows to a trickle on this property. Then we'll dig a well, Willa said, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Or find another solution. Wilbur's weathered face creased in a slight smile. You've got spirit, I'll give you that. Reminds me of my Sarah, God rest her. She never did know when to back down either. That evening, when Sam arrived, Willa recounted Parker's visit. The sheriff's expression darkened as she spoke. Parker's used to getting his way, Sam said, pacing the newly repaired porch. He's expanded Big Sky by pressuring smaller ranchers to sell out. He can pressure all he wants, Willa replied. I'm not selling. I admire your determination, but Parker plays dirty. He's not above damming the creek entirely in dry spells. Sam stopped pacing and faced her directly. There is another option. The territorial legislature is considering a bill that would redistribute water rights more equitably. If it passes, Parker's stranglehold would end. When will they decide? The vote is scheduled for next month in Helena. Sam's expression turned thoughtful. In the meantime, we need to make sure you can withstand whatever pressure Parker applies. The "we" wasn't lost on Willa. Despite her best efforts to maintain emotional distance, she found herself increasingly drawn to Sam Harrington. He was everything Edmund Edward was not: honest, steadfast, reliable. When he made a promise, she believed it would be kept. "I was thinking," Sam continued, "Jenkins mentioned you found some old farming equipment in the barn. With a bit of repair, you could plant a small crop this season. Not cattle feed, but vegetables for your own use and perhaps to sell in town." "I know little about farming," Willa admitted, "but I'm willing to learn. Eliza Martin at the general store's wife was raised on a farm. She might be willing to advise you." The conversation shifted to practical matters: what crops might thrive with limited water, how to repair the ancient plow Jenkins had discovered, the possibility of acquiring a few chickens for eggs. As they talked, the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink over the distant mountains, bathing the porch in golden light. In that moment, with plans taking shape and Sam's steady presence beside her, Willa felt a fragile hope bloom. Perhaps Triple Cross could become more than just a refuge; it could become a true home. The following weeks established a routine. Jenkins continued repairs on the buildings, while Willa focused on making the house livable and preparing a small garden plot. Sam visited regularly, often bringing supplies from town or news that might affect the ranch. As June gave way to July, the summer heat intensified. Bitter Creek, as promised, began to diminish, though it still provided enough water for Willa's modest needs. The garden flourished under her increasingly knowledgeable care, guided by occasional visits from Eliza Martin, who proved eager to share her farming expertise. One evening in mid-July, Willa was harvesting the first of her summer vegetables when Sam arrived unexpectedly, his expression grave. "What's happened?" she asked, immediately concerned. "Parker's men built a diversion dam upstream," Sam replied without preamble. "By tomorrow, Bitter Creek will be dry on your property." Willa's heart sank. Can he do that legally? His water rights allow him to divert necessary amounts for his operation. It's a gray area in the law. Sam's jaw tightened. "I've sent a telegram to the territorial authorities, but it could be weeks before they respond." "And my garden will die in days without water," Willa said, looking at the thriving plants that represented her first small success. "I brought barrels in the wagon," Sam said. "We can haul water from the North Spring on Wilson's property. He's no friend of Parker's and gave permission." Without hesitation, Willa gathered buckets and joined Sam in loading the wagon. They worked side by side in the fading light, making the trip to Wilson's spring and back twice before darkness made travel too dangerous. By the time they finished, both were exhausted and covered in dust. Willa invited Sam to stay for supper, a simple meal of fresh vegetables and cornbread. They ate on the porch, watching stars emerge in the clear summer sky. "Thank you," Willa said softly. "Not just for tonight, but for everything since I arrived." Sam studied her in the lamplight. "You've done the hard work yourself, Willa. I've just lent a hand when needed. You've done more than that. You believed I could make this work when everyone else thought I was foolish to try." Willa hesitated, then added, "It means a great deal to have someone believe in me again." Something shifted in Sam's expression, a softening, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "You're an extraordinary woman, Willa Osborne, coming out here alone, taking on this challenge. It takes courage most men don't possess." "Not courage," she countered. "Desperation." "It started as desperation, maybe, but what you've built here in just a few weeks, that's determination and heart." Their eyes met, and Willa felt a current pass between them: recognition, connection, possibility. For a breathless moment, she thought he might reach for her hand. Instead, Sam stood and moved to the porch railing, his back to her. "Parker won't stop with the diversion dam," he said, his voice carefully controlled. Once he realizes you're finding ways around it, he'll escalate. The abrupt change of subject stung, though Willa understood it. Whatever was developing between them was complicated by her recent widowhood and his position as sheriff. "I won't be bullied off my land," she said firmly. Sam turned back to face her. "No, I don't expect you will be, but be careful, Willa. Parker has influential friends and few scruples." After Sam departed, Willa lay awake long into the night, replaying their conversation. The connection between them was undeniable, but timing and circumstances seemed determined to keep them apart. Perhaps it was for the best, she reasoned. She needed time to heal from Edmund's betrayal before opening her heart again. The next morning confirmed Sam's prediction. Bitter Creek had dwindled to a muddy trickle on her property. Willa set up a water rotation system for her garden, carefully rationing the precious liquid they'd hauled the night before. Jenkins arrived mid-morning with news from town. "Parker's been telling folks you'll be gone by month's end," he reported as he helped Willa repair a garden fence. "Offering bets on how long you'll last. He'll lose his money then," Willa replied, driving a nail with perhaps more force than necessary. "There's something else," Jenkins added, his voice dropping. "Rumor has it Parker's bringing in some rough characters from Idaho. Men with reputations for handling problems." Willa paused, hammer in midair. "You think he'd resort to violence?" "Not directly. Parker's too careful for that. But accidents happen on isolated ranches." Jenkins gave her a meaningful look. "Might be wise to accept the sheriff's offer to stay in town for a spell." "I won't be driven from my home," Willa said firmly, though a flicker of fear sparked within her. "If Parker wants this land, he'll have to do better than threats and intimidation." Despite her brave words, Willa took extra precautions that night, checking locks, keeping Sam's revolver close, and setting out lanterns to illuminate the yard. She slept fitfully, waking at every unfamiliar sound. Dawn brought no trouble, but as Willa stepped onto the porch with her morning coffee, she noticed a dark smudge of smoke on the horizon in the direction of her north pasture. Setting down her cup, she grabbed her shawl and hurried toward the smoke, dread building with each step. The sight that greeted her made her blood run cold. The grass in the north pasture was ablaze, flames spreading rapidly in the dry summer conditions. The fire line was advancing toward the house and barn. Willa ran back to the ranch, her lungs burning from exertion and smoke. She rang the large iron bell Jenkins had hung for emergencies, its clanging echoing across the property. Then she began filling buckets from her water barrels, knowing it wouldn't be enough but unable to stand idle. Jenkins arrived minutes later, having heard the bell from his cabin. Together, they began digging a firebreak between the advancing flames and the buildings, working frantically with shovels to clear a strip of bare earth. The sound of approaching riders brought a surge of hope. Sam had come with men from town. The firefighting effort redoubled with the additional hands, and by mid-afternoon they had contained the blaze. The north pasture was scorched black, but the ranch building stood unscathed. Sam found Willa sitting on the porch steps, her face streaked with soot, hands raw from shoveling. He sat beside her, equally disheveled. "It wasn't an accident," Willa said, her voice hoarse from smoke. "Someone set that fire deliberately." "I know," Sam replied grimly. "We found where it started, 3 separate points of origin along your property line with Big Sky." "Can you prove Parker was behind it?" Sam shook his head. "Not enough for the law, but everyone knows." Willa closed her eyes briefly, exhaustion and anger warring within her. "What happens now?" "Now," Sam said, his voice hardening, "we fight back." The next morning, Willa woke to the sound of voices and horses. Peering through her bedroom window, she saw a dozen riders in the yard, ranchers from neighboring properties, led by Sam. Dressing quickly, she went downstairs to find Jenkins preparing coffee for the gathering. "Sheriff's called a meeting," he explained. "Seems Parker's finally pushed too far." Outside, Sam was addressing the assembled ranchers. "Won't stand for intimidation tactics," he was saying as Willa approached. "Parker's chokehold on water rights hurts all of us, not just Triple Cross." "What exactly are you proposing, Sheriff?" asked one man Wilson, Willa recognized from their water-hauling expedition. A united front, Sam replied. Parker's power comes from picking off ranchers one by one. Together, we can challenge his water rights in territorial court. That takes time and money, objected another rancher. Parker has plenty of both. I've been in contact with the territorial legislature, Sam continued. The water rights bill comes up for a vote next week. If it passes, Parker's stranglehold ends. Until then, we need to ensure Mrs. Osborne's safety and help rebuild what the fire destroyed. The gathered ranchers murmured among themselves, then Wilson stepped forward. My boys and I will help reseed the north pasture when the time comes, and we can spare some hay until then. Others joined in with offers of assistance, fence posts, labor, even a few head of cattle to start Willa's herd. Their generosity overwhelmed her. I don't know how to thank you all, she said when the offers subsided. No thanks needed, Wilson replied. Parker's been a thorn in all our sides for years. You standing up to him has given the rest of us courage to do the same. As the meeting broke up, Sam approached Willa. There's something else, he said quietly. I've arranged for deputies to patrol your property until the legislative vote. You won't be alone out here. You think Parker will try again? I think he's desperate. The fire was meant to scare you off, but it's backfired by uniting the smaller ranchers against him. Sam's expression was grave, which makes him more dangerous, not less. Over the next few days, Willa's ranch became a hub of activity as neighboring ranchers helped clear the burned pasture and strengthen defenses against further attacks. Sam's deputies maintained a visible presence, and Parker's men kept their distance, though they were spotted watching from ridgelines. Each evening, Sam would visit to check on progress and discuss the latest news from town. These quiet conversations on the porch became the highlight of Willa's days, a respite from the tension that permeated the valley. On one such evening, as they watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson, Sam seemed particularly pensive. Something's troubling you, Willa observed, pouring him a cup of coffee. Sam accepted the cup but didn't drink. I received a telegram from the marshal's office in Denver today. They've been investigating your husband's activities. Willa stiffened. And they found documents suggesting he was working with someone local when he purchased Triple Cross, a partner who helped identify vulnerable properties. Who? Sam's gaze met hers. They're not certain, but they have reason to believe it was James Parker. The revelation struck Willa like a physical blow. Parker, but why would he help Edmund buy property he wanted for himself? The theory is that Parker intended to force you or Edmund to sell at a loss once water became an issue. He's done it before with other properties. Sam's expression darkened. What he didn't count on was you arriving to claim the ranch or your determination to make it succeed despite his interference. Willa absorbed this new information, pieces falling into place. That explains his urgency to drive me out. He expected to reclaim this land easily once Edmund was gone. Exactly, and now he's running out of time. If the water rights bill passes next week, his leverage disappears, making these next few days the most dangerous, Willa concluded. Sam nodded grimly. I've asked for additional deputies from Helena, but they won't arrive before the vote. I won't leave, Willa said firmly. This is my home now. I won't be driven from it by fear. I wouldn't expect anything less, Sam replied, and the pride in his voice warmed her. But I'll be staying here until this is resolved. Sam, you can't, I can and will. I've already arranged for Deputy Miller to handle things in town. His tone brooked no argument. Parker's men respect firearms more than badges, and I intend to be visibly armed. That night, Sam slept on a cot in the living room while Willa tossed restlessly upstairs. His presence was both comforting and unsettling protection from external threats, yes, but also a reminder of her growing feelings for him. Feelings she wasn't sure she was ready to acknowledge, much less act upon. The next morning dawned clear and hot, the July sun already fierce as it rose over the eastern hills. Willa was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when a rider approached at a gallop Deputy Miller from town. Sam met him in the yard, and Willa watched through the window as they spoke, the deputy's animated gestures suggesting urgent news. When Sam returned to the house, his expression was grim. Parker's called in reinforcements, he reported. 6 riders arrived from Idaho last night. Bad men with worse reputations. Hired guns, not officially. Parker's too clever for that. They're being introduced as cousins helping with ranch work. Sam's mouth tightened. But their timing is suspicious, especially with the territorial vote just 3 days away. Throughout the day, tension mounted as Parker's new men were spotted riding along the property boundaries, watching the ranch. By evening, Willa felt like a prisoner in her own home, constrained by the implicit threat their presence represented. As darkness fell, Sam insisted on extinguishing all lamps except one in the kitchen, keeping the house mostly dark to avoid presenting clear targets. They sat at the kitchen table, speaking in low voices. "The vote is Monday," Sam said, cleaning his revolver by the dim lamplight. "If we can hold out until then," a rifle shot cracked through the night, shattering the window above the sink. Sam instantly doused the lamp and pulled Willa to the floor. "Stay down," he ordered, crawling to the window to peer cautiously outside. More shots followed, peppering the house from multiple directions. Glass shattered and bullets thudded into wooden walls. "They're shooting blind," Sam muttered, "trying to scare us, not hit us, yet." "What do we do?" Willa asked, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "When there's a lull, we're going to make for the root cellar. It's stone-walled, safer than the house." The shooting continued sporadically for what seemed like hours but was likely only minutes. When a brief silence fell, Sam gripped Willa's hand. "Now, stay low." They crept through the dark house to the back door. Outside, the moon had risen, casting silver light across the yard. The root cellar was 30 yards away, 30 yards of exposed ground. "Ready," Sam whispered. Willa nodded, and they burst through the door, running crouched toward the cellar. They were halfway there when the shooting resumed. Bullets kicking up dirt around their feet, Sam pushed Willa ahead of him, shielding her with his body as they covered the final distance. They tumbled into the cellar, and Sam pulled the heavy wooden door closed behind them just as bullets thudded into it. In the darkness, Willa could hear Sam's ragged breathing and feel the warmth of his body pressed against hers in the confined space. He struck a match, revealing a small oil lamp on a shelf, which he lit with shaking hands. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his eyes scanning her intently. "No," Willa assured him. "You?" Sam grimaced, and in the lamplight, Willa saw blood darkening his sleeve. "Grazed my arm, nothing serious." Despite his dismissal, Willa insisted on examining the wound. Using water from a stored jug and strips torn from her petticoat, she cleaned and bandaged his arm. "You're good at this," Sam observed, watching her work. "I've had practice. Edward came home injured more than once." "Now I wonder if he was involved in schemes that went wrong." Willa tied off the bandage. "There, it's not deep, but we should have Dr. Matthews look at it when we can." "Thank you." Sam caught her hand as she withdrew it, holding it gently. "Willa, I need to tell you something, in case." He hesitated. "In case we don't make it out of here," she finished for him. "That's not going to happen," he said firmly. "But yes, in case." Willa waited, her heart suddenly racing for reasons unrelated to danger. "I've developed feelings for you," Sam said simply. "Inappropriate ones, given your recent widowhood and my position. I've tried to keep them to myself, but facing mortality has a way of clarifying priorities." "Sam, you don't need to respond," he interrupted. "I understand it's too soon and that you're still healing from betrayal. I just couldn't bear the thought of never telling you." In the warm glow of the lamplight, with danger surrounding them and the future uncertain, Willa found clarity of her own. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, a gentle kiss that contained both question and answer. When she pulled back, Sam's expression was one of wonder. "I didn't expect that," he admitted. "Neither did I," Willa replied honestly, "but life is too uncertain for regrets. Edward took 3 years of my life with his lies. I won't let him take my future too." Sam's hand cupped her cheek. "When I first saw you in town, standing on those general store steps, looking so determined despite everything, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe, or possibility. I felt it too," Willa confessed, "but I was afraid to trust it, afraid to trust myself. And now I'm still afraid," she admitted. "But not of you. Of all the things we can't control, Parker, the vote, whether this ranch survives." The sound of gunfire had ceased, but they remained in the cellar, talking in low voices about their lives, their hopes, the future they might build if they survived the night. Dawn found them huddled together, Sam's arm around Willa's shoulders, both dozing fitfully. The sound of hooves and voices woke them. Sam immediately reached for his gun, but Willa placed a hand on his arm. "Listen," she whispered. "That's Jenkins calling for us." Cautiously, Sam pushed open the cellar door. Sunlight streamed in, momentarily blinding them. When their eyes adjusted, they saw Jenkins and several neighboring ranchers in the yard, rifles ready. "Sheriff, Mrs. Osborne," Jenkins called. "You can come out. They're gone." Emerging from the cellar, Willa surveyed the damage to her home: broken windows, bullet holes in walls, trampled garden. But it stood, and so did she. "What happened?" Sam asked as they approached the gathered men. Wilson stepped forward. "Word reached us about the shooting. We rallied every able-bodied man and rode out at first light. Parker's hired guns saw us coming and scattered. And Parker, holed up at Big Sky with his regular hands, claims no knowledge of the attack." Wilson spat disgustedly. "As if anyone believes that." The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity as Willa's allies helped repair the damage to her home. Sam's wound was properly treated by Dr. Matthews, who rode out from town, and additional deputies arrived from Helena to maintain order until the territorial vote. On Monday morning, Sam departed for Helena to witness the legislative session, promising to return with news as soon as possible. Willa kept busy with repairs, trying not to watch the horizon for his return. It was near sunset when she heard the approach of a single rider. Stepping onto the porch, her heart leapt at the sight of Sam's familiar silhouette against the crimson sky. His expression as he dismounted told her everything she needed to know. "The bill passed," she said, not a question but a statement. Sam's face broke into a grin. "Unanimously, Parker's monopoly on water rights is officially ended. By next spring, every ranch on Bitter Creek will have guaranteed access, regulated by the territorial authority." Willa closed her eyes briefly, relief washing through her. "It's over then." "Not quite." Sam mounted the porch steps to stand before her. "Parker still owns the largest ranch in the valley. He'll still have influence, but his ability to force smaller ranchers out is significantly diminished. And the men who attacked us, warrants have been issued. 2 were apprehended trying to cross into Idaho. They'll stand trial for attempted murder." Sam's expression sobered. "Parker himself will likely escape legal consequences. There's no direct evidence linking him to the attack, but his reputation is in tatters. Even his allies in Helena are distancing themselves." Willa nodded, accepting the imperfect justice. "So Triple Cross is safe." "As safe as any ranch in Montana territory," Sam replied with a slight smile. "Which is to say, still subject to weather, wildlife, and the general challenges of frontier life." "Challenges I'm prepared to face," Willa said firmly. "I never doubted it." Sam's gaze was warm with admiration. "You're the strongest person I've ever met, Willa Osborne." "I don't feel strong," she admitted. "Most days I'm terrified I'll fail." "That's what makes your courage all the more remarkable." Sam hesitated, then reached for her hands. "I meant what I said in the cellar. My feelings for you are real and they've only deepened, but I understand if you need time." Willa silenced him with a finger to his lips. "I've had time. 3 years with a man who was a lie taught me to recognize truth when I see it." She took a deep breath. "And you, Samuel Harrington, are the most honest, honorable man I've ever known." Sam's eyes darkened with emotion. "Then let me be your truth, Willa. Let me be the man who stands beside you, who helps you build this ranch into everything it can be, who loves you honestly for the rest of our days." "Is that a proposal, Sheriff?" Willa asked, her voice catching. "It is," Sam confirmed, dropping to one knee. "Willa Osborne, I love you. Will you marry me? Not tomorrow or next week, but whenever you're ready. I'll wait as long as you need." Tears blurred Willa's vision as she looked down at this man who had helped her rebuild not just her ranch, but her faith in love itself. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you. And I don't want to wait. Life's too precious and too uncertain for waiting." Rising, Sam gathered her in his arms, his kiss a promise of all the days to come. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues, Willa felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Edmund's lies had led her here, to this place, this moment, this man. And for that, at least, she could be grateful. In the years that followed, Triple Cross flourished under their joint stewardship. The water rights legislation transformed the valley, allowing smaller ranches to thrive alongside Big Sky. Parker eventually sold his holdings and moved east, his power in the territory diminished. Willa and Sam were married that autumn in a simple ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by the neighbors who had become friends and allies. Jenkins gave the bride away, his weathered face softened with emotion as he placed Willa's hand in Sam's. Their life together wasn't without challenges: harsh winters, dry summers, the general uncertainties of ranching in Montana territory. But they faced each obstacle together, their partnership strengthening with each passing season. In time, the bullet holes in the house walls were patched and forgotten. The north pasture, once scorched black, grew lush with grass. Children's laughter echoed in rooms that had once known only silence and fear. And on summer evenings, when the day's work was done, Willa and Sam would sit on the porch, watching the sun set over land that was truly theirs, not through deception or coercion, but through honest labor and unwavering determination. Any regrets? Sam would sometimes ask, his arm around her shoulders, and Willa would smile, thinking of the long, strange journey that had brought her to this place, this life, this love. Not one, she would answer truthfully, not a single one. For she had discovered that sometimes the end of one story, even a story built on lies, could be the beginning of something far more beautiful. Something true.